All right, good morning, everybody. Hopefully, everybody did a good job with our yesterday's lesson 7.1, representing percents. Today, we're going to continue on to 7.2. 7.2 is actually usually just a one-day lesson. If we were together in class, we'd probably spend one day working on the lesson and then maybe the next day doing an activity. But since we're distance learning, I'm splitting it up and we're going to actually have 3 separate days to try to keep it short and sweet and about minimal amount of work, making sure that we're practicing each little concept at a time. So today, we're going to start 7.2. So let's take a look. Alright, remember that this is a 3-day lesson, so our learning target for the next 3 days, we're going to be talking about fractions, decimals, and percents. And we're going to be converting fractions, decimals, and percents back and forth from one another. We already know how to go from fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. We'll talk a little bit about that if some of us need a reminder. We're also going to be throwing in percents in there. And to be able to do those conversions, we are going to use equivalent fractions, multiplication, and division. I highly recommend that you have a calculator out and ready for you. I know I've got my phone that I will be using during this lesson and the next couple days as well. So you might want to make sure that those are out and ready for you as you are doing your work for today. Okay. All right, so the first thing we have is this nice little graphic organizer for us. You'll see a triangle on the right. The triangle on the right has a percent symbol in the bottom right-hand corner. It has an F on the top, that stands for fraction. It has a D on the bottom left, and that stands for decimal. Today, we are only going to be worried about number 1. Number 1 is the only thing we're going to be worried about today. It is talking about converting from a percent to a fraction. So our directions tell us when we convert a percent to a fraction, we write the percent over 100, and then we simplify. If you look at my triangle over here and we follow the arrows starting in the bottom right where it has a percent, follow the arrows up to the F. So that means that I'm changing a percent into a fraction. I have a little graphic on there for us. It has X over 100. So the X represents the percent. So whatever that percent is, we're going to put on the top of a fraction. So that's going to be our numerator. And our denominator will always be the same because we're talking about percent. So that denominator will be 100 because the definition of a percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. So on all of these problems, we're going to put the percent on the top and we're going to put 100 on the bottom, and then we're going to simplify. So we have a couple examples to do together. So percents and fractions. The first thing I'm going to work on is if I have a percent and I want to change it into a fraction, I'm going to take my number here. I have 15%, so 15 is going to go on the top and 100 is going to go on the bottom. Now, I'm pretty much done. That's a really, really great answer, but I'm not finished because I do want to make sure that this is simplified. So I can divide the numerator and denominator both by 5 here. And my final answer then would be 15 divided by 5 is 3. And 100 divided by 5 is 20. So 15% is the same as 3/20. All right, number 2. Number 2, I have 80%. So I'm going to put 100 on the bottom right away because I'm changing it into a fraction, and I know my denominator is always 100. I then take my percent and I put it right up on top. And now I'm pretty much done. The only thing I have left to do is I can simplify. There's many, many numbers that go into 80 and 100. Since they're both even, they both end in zeros. I could do 2, 5, 10, 4. There's a whole bunch of different numbers. But if we use our greatest common factor, which is 20, that means I'm only going to have to simplify one time to get my final answer. So 80 divided by 20 is 4, and 100 divided by 20 is 5. So 80% is the same as 4/5. All right, last one that we're going to work on here is 125%. Now, it is okay to have a percent that is more than 100. Think about when you get extra credit on a test. You get more than 100%. No matter what, my denominator is still going to be 100, and I'll put that 125 on the top. Now, I still need to simplify this, so I'm going to divide both of these by 25 if we think about quarters. And 125 divided by 25 is 5, and 100 divided by 25 is 4. So my answer could be 5/4. I could also turn this into a mixed number by going 1 and 1/4. Either of those would be really, really great answers, and I would accept either of those. Okay. Now tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit about how to do percents and decimals, and that's actually going to help us with our next one as well. However, I want to show you that you actually already have the information to be able to do these next problems. It says writing fractions or mixed numbers as a percent. So now I have a fraction I want to turn into a percent. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rewrite my fraction. So I've got 9/20. And if we remember, a percent is always a number out of 100, right? So I want my denominator to still be 100. So now I have to ask myself, how do I go from 20 to 100? I would times by 5. So we know the golden rule of math, whatever you do to one thing, we have to do the other. So since I multiplied 20 by 5, that also means that I need to multiply 9 by 5. And 9 times 5 is 45. So this numerator now, because look, I have a number out of 100. That numerator is going to be my percent. So it's 45%. So we can use equivalent fractions to help us write percents from fractions. So let's take a look at number 2. On number 2, I've got 1/4. I've got 1/4, and I want to turn it into a percent. So I want my denominator, I don't want it to be 4 anymore. I want my denominator to be 100. So I have to ask myself, how do I go from 4 to 100? Well, 4 times 25 is 100. But the golden rule of math, whatever you do to one thing, we need to do to the other. So that means I also need to multiply 1 by 25. And I get 25 over 100. So my numerator is going to actually just be my percent since my denominator is 100. So 1/4 is the same as 25%. All right, last problem to do with you today. I have 3/10. So I'm going to rewrite my fraction 3/10, and I want to write it as a percent. So I want my denominator to be 100. So then whatever I get up here on my numerator, I know that that's going to be my answer. So I need to figure out, how do I go from 10 to 100? Well, 10 times 10 is 100, which means I also need to multiply that 3 by 10 as well, because whatever I do to one thing, I need to do to the other. And 3 times 10 is 30, so my answer is 30%. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully that gives you enough information to be successful on this topic, fractions and percents. You do not have an IXL that you need to do today. However, there is a very short, very short assignment. It is a blue worksheet in this folder that you need to download into Notability, and make sure that you submit. The folder is open for you to be able to do that. As always, reach out on Schoology and let me know if you need any help. Bye, everyone.